Okay, I see a few more people coming on, so we can get started. Hi, my name is Jerry Jewett-Tennant. I am the Assistant Director of Research Navigation at the Clinical Translational Science Collaborative, and I will be one of your presenters today, along with Dr. Umit Gurkin. I want to do a brief introduction of Dr. Gurkin for all of you. Umit Gurkin is the Wilbur J. Austin Professor of Engineering with tenure at Case Western Reserve University. He holds BS degrees in chemical engineering and mechanical engineering and a PhD in biomedical engineering from Purdue University. He completed his postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical School and the Harvard MIT program in health sciences and technology. Dr. Gurkin's research is about global equitable access to diagnostics and personalized health, and he is a leader in efficiently translating microfluidics and point-of-care diagnostics for blood disorders, antimicrobial resistance, and cancer. He has led international clinical studies on sickle cell disease in the United States, Africa, Southeast Asia, and India. And his inventions have led to over 15 issued US patents and 4 successful biotechnology companies to date, with products in global markets. He is also our CTSC annual pilot faculty lead, and he will be doing a little bit of this presentation with me, so we can get started. I just have a little information for you about the CTSC of Northern Ohio. And that CTSC acronym stands for the Clinical Translational Science Collaborative of Northern Ohio. And that's because Case Western Reserve University is the recipient of the Clinical and Translational Science Award. This award or grant is from the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. There are over 60 CTSAs working across the country, and of these more than 60, there are 3 in Ohio, at Case Western, at Ohio State, and at the University of Cincinnati. We call ourselves a collaborative, hence the CTSC title, but the others in Ohio are a clinical and translational science center and an institute respectively, but we're all CTS awardees. We are intentional here at the CTSC about our priorities and our mission and aims by engaging our stakeholders, the workforce, patients, and community members to collaborate locally, regionally, and nationally. In the first 2 years of this CTSC cycle, we've begun implementing and disseminating CTSC research programs across clinical and community settings in order to advance access to health interventions in our area and beyond. We want to understand the barriers to recruitment of underrepresented groups in clinical trials, then test and scale interventions aimed at breaking down those barriers to diversify study engagement. Our workforce development team has already started producing impactful educational and training programs for translational research professionals at all levels and all disciplines, including high schoolers, both in clinical and community settings. Case Western CTSC is not new and has been around for 17 years as of last week. Our CTSC has developed a new generation of researchers, has enhanced collaboration among investigators, streamlined discovery by building partnerships among industry and community partners. But we haven't done any of that alone. Our partners since the beginning have been all the large hospital systems in Cleveland: University Hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, and the VA in Cleveland, which you can see their logos there on the screen. But for the first time ever, we've expanded outside our bubble to include 2 new partners, NeoMed and the University of Toledo. That's very exciting because it offers a whole new perspective on who translational science is for and how we can make an impact wider than what our footprint has been in the past. In addition to all the research resources we provide, we also manage a few companion grants, which you can see there on the side of the screen. These are the K2 or K12 Career Development Program for early stage investigators, the T32 pre- and postdoctoral programs, the R25, which focuses on undergraduate researchers, and the RC2, which is a large grant we administer that addresses innovation and overcoming barriers in clinical and translational science. You can see that that RFA is open now, and I'll have a little bit more information about that at the end of the presentation. And right now, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gherkin, who will explain a little bit more about translational science and translational research.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Before we go into the specifics of the CTSC Annual Pilot Award RFA, we want to go over briefly what we mean by translation or translation research or translational science. As someone who has been working on translating ideas from lab to the world, I would like to share with you some insights on how you can think about translation and what type of projects might be suitable for the annual pilot program. Translation is defined as turning the observations that we make, observations, discoveries, or inventions that we make in the laboratory or in the clinic or in the community into interventions that can improve human health and human health of individuals, like health of individuals, as well as the general public. So these ideas and these interventions can range from diagnostics to therapeutics to medical procedures as well as behavioral changes. One key aspect of thinking about translation is converting or translating one idea that might be applicable or that might be in practice in your lab or in your unit, let's say, to the outside world. Taking what you do or what you practice or what you use in your current practice and making it much more broadly applicable to the outside world. We also want to make a clear distinction between translational research and translational science because for the first time this year, we will start funding translational science projects, which are different than translation research projects. Translation research projects are defined as a project that can focus on addressing a certain step or a certain need in the translational path of an idea. Translation process is a long and a hard pathway that ranges that goes from ideation all the way to commercialization. And we know that within 1 year, within the support structure of a CTSC Annual Pilot Award, you cannot address all the translation research process steps. But if you have identified, or if you can identify a particular bottleneck or particular step that is stifling or slowing down the progress of a translational process or a translation research project, can be addressed within the scope of this annual pilot project. Translation research projects are typically focused on a particular target or a disease. It can be disease specific. You might focus on addressing a particular issue in the diagnosis or in the therapy of a certain disease. That would be a translation research project. Translation science projects are different. The translation science is defined as the field of investigation or research that is focused on understanding the scientific and operational principles of a translational research project. For example, if there's a particular translational step that can be broadly or generally applicable to more than one disease or more than one diagnostic approach or therapy approach, it can be addressed within this project. So translation science is the science of doing translation research. So think of it that way. Can you think of, for example, a different way of doing something particular in the research or in the operation or the clinical practice that would help other translation researchers? And translation science projects should be disease agnostic, and it should not focus on a particular disease or a particular problem. It should be generalizable to other translation research projects. More information is available on translational science in the ncats.nih.gov web page. If you're interested, you can actually go take a look at that web page for more information. Next slide, please, Jerry. We would like to give you an example of how translation research and translational science activities made a difference in the COVID-19 pandemic, and how certain things could have been done differently, or differently to, have a faster response, for example. So one of the things that we want to highlight here, as part of translation research and translational science, efficiency and speed is important, and cross-disciplinary collaborations are important. Now, we are all familiar with the developments that took place during the COVID pandemic. As of March 11th of 2020, the WHO declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. And immediately after that, many different research groups at different locations in the United States as well as in the world started working on better understanding uh, the virus, the infection state, and other aspects. I will not be able to go into all the details here, but you can actually see a summary of the events that happened. For example, University of Minnesota started testing hydroxychloroquine, and then NIH trial started. Everything happened pretty quickly and in a really cross-disciplinary and in a team science manner. And there were activities that were happening on the therapeutic side as well as on the diagnostic side. Certain therapies received emergency use authorization, and certain diagnostics, especially saliva-based diagnostics, received emergency use authorization for home use. All these processes included manufacturability, regulatory processes, reimbursement processes. You can actually think about many translational projects within this timeline that made the COVID-19 response possible, with the diagnostics as well as with the vaccines. And every bottleneck which we heard on the news or through research articles and etc., we heard about those many different bottlenecks: manufacturability, or FDA taking certain actions to quickly review and approve certain therapies. Those are all translational projects of their own. Now, the next slide, please. Now, if you think about the motivation or the unmet need in the COVID-19 pandemic, it was essentially the rapid spread of the virus from one location to all over the world, and especially in the United States, the cases rapidly increased, and from 100,000 to 2 million, and it became the third leading cause of death in the United States, and 100,000 cases were reported in one day as of November 4th. So these were the unmet needs. So unmet needs in terms of finding some kind of a vaccine or diagnosing, so that we can actually slow down and control the spread of the pandemic and save as many lives as we can. So this is an example of how you can think about the unmet needs and focus on an urgent and timely unmet need to address in your project. There are so many different types of unmet needs that you can focus on. This is a dramatic example. This is a once in a lifetime dramatic example, probably the COVID-19 unmet needs, but there might be such unmet needs in your area of research or in your field that you can actually that might resemble certain aspects of the pandemic that we discussed here. So think about the unmet needs in that regard. Translation research projects are typically motivated by very clear and very strong unmet needs. Next slide, please. Now, the translational science comes into picture somewhat indirectly. For example, when you consider other issues that are related to the project. For example, insurance coverage related issues that were faced during the COVID pandemic, and also the young, poor, certain communities, certain populations, avoided care for COVID-19 symptoms. Cost could be the factor, socioeconomic factors could be other factors. Rural hotspots emerged. So if you have a project, for example, that focuses on these aspects, not particularly the COVID-19 disease or the pandemic specifically, but other factors that play a role in creating this pandemic and the spread of the virus to certain communities, those could be good translation science projects because, for example, addressing the socioeconomic factors that might make a disease worse in a certain community, our learnings, our project in that area might benefit other diseases, other communities, and other aspects of clinical research. So if you, for example, design a study that focuses on the rural hotspots in COVID-19, without focusing on COVID-19 specifically, that could be a good translational science project. And with that, we also want to emphasize that diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility are extremely important to the NIH mission, to our institution's mission, and CTSC's mission. And if you can address, and if there is a need to address such considerations in your project, it would be really good to have them clearly identified. Next slide, please. So now continuing with the COVID-19 example and trying to again distinguish translation research and translation science projects. Some examples of translation research during COVID could be understanding the pathogenesis of coronavirus infection more quickly, developing better sensors or faster sensors or better diagnostic methods or detection methods for the SARS-CoV-2 RNA, which many groups actually worked on this problem, and screening the community asymptomatic and serological testing, screen for such needs, and also testing the SARS-CoV-2 RNA for staff, students, the wider population, and supporting the increased recruitment of patients into COVID-19 trials. So these could all be translation research projects. But within the same context, some other projects would be considered translation science. For example, studying the adoption of COVID-19 vaccine in the general population and addressing the COVID-19 vaccine uptake or resistance to vaccine could be a translation science project because it might have implications to other diseases. That the same underlying causes for COVID-19 vaccine resistance might be, for example, also present in other diseases. So you can make it disease agnostic by studying that. Or studying the limitations of access to treatment or trust in healthcare. So these are all, you can make it specific to COVID-19 pandemic or not. These are general problems of our healthcare system or our modern times. So focusing on those in a disease agnostic way would be translational science projects. Other examples, understanding how policy help reduce the social drivers of risk, and you can actually come up with many other examples of, maybe we can say, systemic problems or generalizable problems to many different diseases or many different clinical research projects. Next slide, please. We also want to emphasize that, as I mentioned earlier, translational process includes many different steps. According to the NIH definition, we can define these steps as T0, T1, T2, T3, and T4. T0 is oftentimes considered as basic science, the discovery that we do in the lab, like projects that are typically supported by standard NIH grants, such as R01 or R21 grants. T1 is you may consider as the first interaction with the students. It can be, for example, a clinical study that is approved by the IRB that recruits certain subjects to the study. And maybe you can start testing certain human biological samples, or you might start, the first interaction with the humans of the research project can be considered as T1. T2 is a little bit more advanced. Now we are talking about clinical trials and maybe testing with patients. Human involvement, patient involvement is much more clear and much more obvious in the T2 level of research. T3 is taking the learnings of T2 and starting to apply them to clinical practice. So this can be, for example, testing if a certain type of diagnostic or a certain type of treatment or a certain type of disease management might be applicable to the clinical practice and how it can be applied to clinical practice. T4 is much more advanced, includes maybe multi-site clinical trials and looking at the scalability and applicability of that project or of that idea to the general population, or much larger populations of patients in general terms. In the next slide, please, Jerry, we have a bulleted definition of and examples of some T2, T3, and T4 projects. I want to emphasize that we would like to focus on not so much the basic research, but the early clinical studies, but we want to focus and we want to support a little bit more advanced projects, especially projects that might have identified a certain roadblock or a certain translational step that they would like to address in the project. There are many examples, but other examples can also be included. So there are some examples here, but many other examples can be included in T2, T3, T4 definitions. As I said earlier, T2 would involve some clinical trials. It could also include development of clinical guidelines and comparative effectiveness trials. T3 is a little bit more advanced. It might include dissemination implementation research, which I will explain in the next slide. T4 is more generalizable population level outcomes research. The more clinical studies and the more patients that you involve, translational level goes up. And look at the other examples: cost-benefit analysis, policy analysis, surveillance studies, program evaluation. These would all be included in T4 levels. Next slide, please. So one thing that I want to emphasize is dissemination implementation research studies are covered or are welcome in the annual pilot program. And these are essentially studies that would identify, develop, test strategies for overcoming barriers to adoption, adaptation, integration, scale up, sustainability. Think of them as maybe logistical issues that might slow down or prevent dissemination of certain practices or tools or technologies, treatments. So any research that focuses on those limitations or those challenges might be considered as dissemination or implementation research. And we also want to emphasize any study that focuses on or promotes equitable dissemination and implementation of evidence-based interventions would also be welcome in this program, and especially focusing on underrepresented communities are encouraged. Next slide, please. Now we will go into the specifics of the annual pilot program, and Jerry will take over and go over those details. Thank you very much, everyone.
So as you're creating your application, keep in mind the CTSC's goals for the annual pilot. Namely, funding is to support novel research focusing on urgent health questions or in obtaining the data that will lead to larger NIH or other funding for continued research. We'd like to see PIs from multiple institutions and the development of new collaboration pathways that would lead to long-term relationships. Relationships are not limited to academic or clinical partners. Community partner collaborations are also something we'd like to see, as well as a focus on health equity. As mentioned in the RFA, keep in mind the 12-month timeline. Is your proposed project doable in that kind of time frame? Your application should include the scientific questions you propose to answer, any new approaches you'll develop, and the methods you'll use for implementation. You also want to address how your proposed research will be useful and how you'll disseminate your findings with the funding of $50,000. It's really a hit the ground running type of thing. Your project will need to be completed by June 30th of 2026. If you're not completely familiar with translational science or translational research, even after Dr. Gerken's great explanations, there are appendices in the RFA to help you with additional information. The RFA is going to be your best friend if you're applying for this. Importantly, as with all CTSC of Northern Ohio funding, you'll need to have at least 2 CTSC partner institutions included in your proposal. NeoMed and the University of Toledo can be co-investigators, but are not considered principal investigators due to the newer nature of their current partnership with the CTSC. In addition, community partners can also be investigators or co-investigators and would be considered a third partner. As for eligibility to apply, if the PI is not faculty at case, like a physician from a medical center, they must also have a faculty appointment in case. As mentioned before, PIs can be from multiple partners, and we really encourage that. You must be eligible to apply for an NIH grant, and those eligibility requirements are at the link at the bottom of the page, or you can just find those by Googling NIH eligibility. And we'll, of course, give these slides out in an email after the presentation. We're especially interested in applications from underrepresented minorities, and as mentioned before, faculty from UT and NeoMed and community health leaders can be co-investigators. We have 8 areas of research that are priority areas for this funding, so you can keep that in mind. Reviewers are going to be looking for projects that incorporate one or more of these aspects in their application. Make sure to review these in the RFA, and if your project already has some of these areas, great. If not, you could see where you might be able to add something. Some of these would not be hard to integrate into a project. We've already mentioned translational science and dissemination and implementation research. We're also looking for projects that develop and use innovative techniques in clinical studies with community and clinical partners. And the CTSC has resources and consultations to help researchers with various aspects of clinical trials, and also with using informatics tools, like the 4th bullet there, like Cosmos or Trinetics. If that's a priority area, if you can integrate Cosmos or Trinetics into your project, that would be great. We just found out recently that if you're interested in using Cosmos, there's most likely a meeting you'll need to have with the Epic Corporation who owns Cosmos, and there may be a fee involved, but the CTSC has contacts in our resources that would be able to assist with this meeting and with helping with Cosmos if that's what you need. And we can also assist you with incorporating that into your budget. Additional priority areas are any health issues related to environmental factors, implementation innovation, and getting evidence-based research into routine healthcare policy or clinical practice, community or clinical interventions aimed at health equity, and studies that investigate and improve some aspect of the research process or processes. So the first step is going to be the letter of intent. Your letter of intent should be 1 page and is due November 15th at 11:59 p.m. If you're selected to advance in the process, you'll know by December 15th. The ideal letter of intent will describe a translational research or translational science approach with quantitative and or qualitative outcomes. You'll also want to show in the letter how your project will ultimately lead to a change in health. And I'll go through the LOI components next. So obviously your project title, the names and affiliations of all the PIs, the co-PIs, and the project site. And then when you kind of get into the meat of it, you're going to need a brief, focused summary your question hypothesis of the study. That's going to be about a quarter of a page long and should describe the overall health-related goal. Innovation and translation, that's a section that should be also about a quarter of a page and describe how your project fills a critical translational gap. Feasibility, another quarter of a page, describing the feasible elements of your one-year study. So this is where you want to include potential roadblocks or time concerns that you might have in this section, but overall, you're going to want to show that your project can be completed in that one-year time frame. Project milestones, describing the project plan in about a quarter of a page, and also the scope of the project. We suggest no more than 3 decision-making milestones that can be achieved with this budget of $50,000. Statement of translation as to why the project is innovative and is mid to late stage translational research or science, T2, T3, or T4, and a budget summary, and human subjects. So this is kind of one that has been a problem in the past. If your study requires IRB approval, we need a statement in that letter of intent outlining your plans to obtain that approval by April 30th of 2025. If it's already approved or nearly approved, that's going to result in a favorable, we're going to look at that favorably. Intellectual property questions. Has this project been submitted to receive intellectual property protection? If yes, do you plan to file an invention disclosure? Things like that. If you have questions about any of those kind of things, we'll describe how you can get a consultation before you submit your letter of intent. And special considerations is the last part of the LOI. Statement as to whether this project is planned to have any foreign components. Pretty easy. The first step to starting that LOI is to go to Spark, which is the CTSC's resource request platform. If you don't have an account already, you're going to want to create an account first. And like most sites, after that, you can request services in like a cart fashion. You have 2 options for this. You can go directly to funding opportunities and add the annual pilot to your cart. That's going to let you enter some basic information about your project and get a Spark project number, which is kind of critical for the next step. Your other option is to choose research navigation services and request a consultation before applying. Consultations will be with Dr. Gerken and with me. You'll also only need to submit some basic information about the project once you choose that option. With either option, you're going to receive a Spark project number, which you'll need for the next step, which is the InfoReady system. InfoReady is where you're going to submit the LOI and other requested information, like your budget, abstract, research plan, etc. So this is kind of trips people up sometimes. So you go to Spark first and you get your Spark project ID, but that's not the end. You really haven't applied yet. So the application itself lives in InfoReady. So you need to do the 2 steps. First start in Spark, then go into InfoReady with that project ID that you got from Spark. This is what the InfoReady homepage looks like. It's CASE's grant management system, but even if you're outside CASE, you can get an account and log in. And then you scroll down and you can find the 2024-25 CTSC annual pilot grant application. If you have any problems, we have Wesley Chen, who's the pilot funding coordinator, and you can email her directly. And I'll also send out a link to, or I'll send out a page with all the links that are in this presentation as well. So if you've listened to everything and you're wondering what to do now, the first thing I would do is read and reread the RFA and gather all the information you can for that's required for the LOI and submit it by November 15th. You can always request that consultation in Spark before submitting your LOI, and that can be just to vet the premise, research questions or methods, or just to ask general questions about the process. We put together a few frequently asked questions. So this often comes up. Does a community partner count as a second partner? In all of our other funding, For the CTSC, yes, they do count as that second partner, but for this RFA, they don't. They can be a co-investigator and would count as a third partner. Your LOI should be 1 page maximum, and all the instructions for that are on page 4 of the RFA. And again, what if my project needs IRB approval? That's kind of a big one, and you're going to need to kind of outline what your plans are for getting that IRB approval if you don't already have it or if it's not close. Is a consultation required? No, a consultation is not required. You can have one if you want, just to talk about if you're interested in finding a collaborator, or you want to talk about the intellectual property piece of the LOI. Those are all good reasons to have a consultation. And now we can open it up. I think you need to unmute yourself, but you can ask any questions that you'd like.
Can we start with questions in the chat?
Sure, let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, do barriers to recruitment of diverse populations. Oh, Anne, can you explain that question a little bit?
I think it is Dr. Annie Reyes.
Hi, I'm sorry. Yes, I had a question in terms of the dissemination. One, if one of the topics is to kind of barriers to recruitment. I know it's kind of intervention and implementation, but I was wondering as well if the topic itself could be kind of exploring reasons for barriers to recruitment of underserved and marginalized populations into research.
That could, are you thinking of it as a translational science project? Is it in a disease diagnostic way?
It's more for in terms of the Cleveland Clinic brain study, trying to figure out how to work with community partners to increase the representation of the participants we're recruiting into the study.
I mean, I think you can design this project as a focused translation research project or a more general translational science project. Either way, it could work. I mean, it is in the dissemination and implementation category, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you identify a certain bottleneck or a certain challenge and come up with a solution to that, for example, and propose it as a project to study it, that might work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next question is Dr. Andari. Just to double check if I understand well, if we are an assistant professor at Toledo, we cannot submit a grant as a PI. Do you want to, I can answer that.
Maybe you or Shannon can help with that.
Yeah. Shannon, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's correct. So as Jerry had stated earlier, eligibility includes PI being from one of the partners listed in her slide. I don't know if you want to show that slide again. Case, Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, University Hospitals, or the VA Medical Center. Toledo and Neomed can be co-investigators as well as community members. So if you do need assistance identifying a PI for an annual pilot, please do contact Jerry through the Spark system, and we can try to find a collaborator for you.
One more question. Can you, this might be Shannon too, can you provide more information about who is the ideal candidate to be a PI?
Again, you know, I think I would just go back to the eligibility requirements. We do encourage multiple PI model, and being a faculty member from Case Western and its affiliated partners, Case, Cleveland Clinic, Metro, UH, and the VA. We don't specify early or late stage investigators, although, if you are early stage, fantastic, please do submit. And if you do look at the budget page, I will point out that, the budget page, does, pull out who could receive salary in terms of personnel on the annual pilot. We do ask that a maximum of $5,000 before fringe benefits and salary support is allowed per investigator. And we ask that established investigators, if you're heavily funded with NIH support, to not receive salary support on an annual pilot. So that is listed in the appendix under Appendix 2. I don't know if I answered the question completely.
I would like to just add maybe one quick note here. Underrepresented minorities as PIs are also encouraged. If you are an underrepresented minority, please apply and please, I guess, state in the application. One more thing I would like to add, any PI who is interested in learning more about translation research or translational science, or engage with CTSC or start working with CTSC and its many resources and many contacts and the network of investigators, please consider submitting an application and submitting a Spark request for consultation. If you are not sure if your project or if you are a good fit for the program, just submit a request and we would be happy to talk with you or meet with you. Thank you.
See one more. Do all PIs are required to have a faculty appointment at CASE? Yes. I just started a staff position, so you don't have your CASE appointment yet. Shannon, that's a good question. If it's imminent,
Yeah, it is a good question. You know, the LOI isn't due until November. And then if you're invited for a full application, it'll be due in February of 2025. I suppose, Jerry, you know, as Jerry just said, if you're getting close to that appointment, that may be a consideration. I was also wondering too, if we could say that the contact PI would have to be, if you're in an MPI model, the contact PI, you know, as a CASE faculty appointment, and then as, you know, maybe we could say the other PI would be eligible to apply if they didn't have a faculty just yet. So I don't have a full answer for you just right now, but I think we could take that back for consideration. Let us know. Just you know, we reach out to Amit or Jerry, and we can talk.
don't disqualify yourself for that. So regarding NIH eligibility criteria, does citizenship status matter of the PI?
I would have to look into that question a little bit more. I don't have the answer right now.
As far as I know, no. Like NIH doesn't require, I mean, some NIH training grants require citizenship, but standard NIH grants don't. So I think it is a no, but it would be good to double check.
And I can put that answer maybe in the email I send out too.
Yeah.
If we can find that. So if you have a multiple PI model, do both PIs need to create a Spark ID or just one? I can answer that. Yeah, both of you should, just so then that person is also listed on your project and, you know, from the get-go. So it's pretty easy. It's not hard to get a Spark ID. So it's helpful if you both have them, or anyone involved. You can call them a PI, you can call them a co-I, you can call them a consultant. You can pick several different names for those other PIs. What exactly qualifies and doesn't qualify to meet the 2 partner institutions rule? So our 2 partners, it would be any of our 7 partners. So if you have a community, if you have a PI from the Cleveland Clinic and you have a PI from UH, and maybe you have a community partner as well. So those two PIs count, and then the community partner is counted as the third partner. Does that make sense? Or can Shannon, do you want to explain that in a different way, maybe?
No, I think you said it. You know, obviously we do encourage MPI model. Obvious and the MPIs must be from 2 of our 7 partners. So yeah, they're listed on the RFA under eligibility and review criteria.
Can a co-I be affiliated with other universities that are not listed? No, I don't think so. We need all the everyone on the project to be affiliated with one of the CTSC's partners.
Oh, they're asking about a co-investigator.
Oh, a co-investigator, okay. Is that okay? I'm not sure.
That are not listed. Yeah, they just couldn't be a PI. They couldn't be a PI. So if you had a partner that was with another institution, you could use them as a co-investigator.
And we have what support is available to partner with the PI. So do you mean you'd like to find a collaborator? Can you explain a little bit more, Vanessa? If you need help finding a collaborator, that's a good thing to have a consultation about. And that gives us an idea of, once you put that into Spark, we have an idea what your project is.
Mhm.
You know, doesn't have to be a huge write-up or anything, just some basics about what kind of project you're interested in doing, and then we can kind of figure out who might be a good collaborator for that kind of project. And we do our best to, you know, we have a lot of faculty that are CTSC members at all the institutions, so we kind of draw from that pool to see if someone can be a collaborator. Okay, that's the only other question in the chat. Are there any more questions? In addition to those things, meeting in Spark, how do we access case faculty? Well, that would be, you know, up to you, I think, to determine if any case faculty is interested in the project you might be proposing. We wouldn't necessarily, we would be able to find a collaborator for a project you're already envisioning.
Maybe I can make a few suggestions. So when I applied for, like, I got annual pilot awards from the CTSC, I think twice since I started here at CASE, and I always had co-investigators or co-PIs or MPIs at other institutions. You just reach out to them and share with them your project idea and tell them that you are interested in applying for this annual pilot award, and see if they would like to be in your team. I would like to emphasize that translation research as well as translation science is all about team building. Successful translation research projects have critical team members, key team members who are experienced in different areas. It's all about team building. So you can use this opportunity to start building your team towards working on your project with translational goals. Just reach out to them, call them, or send them an email, and start with that. And you can also, as Jerry said, if you submit a Spark request, we would probably do the same. You know, after we speak with you, we would think about who would be a good collaborator for you and try to make a connection between you and them. You can do it on your own, or we can try to help.
And I just went to the Spark slide for the question that said, how do I request a consultation? Option 2, right there. So spark.case.edu, get your account, and then you can click on Research Navigation Services and choose a consultation. Okay, one more call for questions. Anybody?
Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question if you feel like speaking up.
So this is Grace speaking. Can you clarify, is this for mid-career professionals or is this for early career people? I mean, the application.
Oh, it is open to everyone, like all career levels. We encourage especially applications from early career and underrepresented minorities. There is only one small detail about a senior level PI. I think Shannon can clarify that if they already have other NIH funding, they would not be able to receive support for their own effort, for their own AY effort, for example, from the CTSC. But other than that, anybody can apply. Yes, Shannon?
That's correct. You said it all correct.
By the way, Grace, I think you sent me an email. I have your email here with me.
Okay. Yes, I did.
I'll get back to you on that email.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Still have time. And if you think of a question, you can stick it in the chat or just wait till the end. But we did want to just mention these 2 other CTSC opportunities that we have. Our Atlas program is a team science leadership program. There are 4 2-day sessions that begin in March of next year. It runs through September of 2025. And if you're interested, application or actually nominations are open now. And you can contact Mackenzie Ritter at that email if you'd like a nomination form, and you can also self-nominate if you wish to. The other is the RC2 grant that is also open now. The purpose of this grant is to support unique activities, resources, capabilities, and/or expertise at awarded CTSAs, UM1 hubs, which is what we are. See, you can obtain more information about either one of these by reaching out to the people listed there. Sue Marasco is your contact for the RC2, and she can also get you a copy of the RFA. It is not on our website, so you would have to contact Sue to get that. And again, I'll send all this stuff out in an email to everybody who registered for the webinar. And coming in 2025, this is just an advertisement for CTSC Discovery Day, which will be March 21st next year. We'd love for anybody on this call or anybody who's an early stage investigator to volunteer to be a mentor. We intend to have 3 or 4 students per mentor, and that person would help these students from Cleveland area high schools judge scientific posters. And we'd also love if you have any CTSC related research, if you did a poster for us. But we have a poster submission form. All of that will come a little bit later in our newsletter. If you're not a member and you don't get our newsletter, you should do this and become a CTSC member. You can access our newsletter, of course. You'll receive all of those funding opportunity announcements and other events that we have. You can scan the QR code, or it's also on our website. Right under, it's on the homepage. If you just scroll down, it says become a member. And I'm not seeing any more questions, and I'm guessing anybody else doesn't have any that they want to shout out. If not, we are at 3:56, which is pretty good, I think. And if you have any questions, you can email me. You can also email that CTSC research concierge at case.edu, and or go to Spark and request a consultation. Thank you all. Thanks for your attention. Have a good day.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Wow, everyone jumped off.
Can't find, my Zoom disappeared.